Welcome. Welcome to a special meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Special in that it's not only designed to be our monthly workshop, but we will have some action items that we would have probably handled at a second regular council meeting, which will not happen this month. So this is a joint meeting. So we're designed today to run from 2 until 5 p.m. and there will be action taken on part of our agenda. So to begin with, we have our agenda and our consent agenda. If there are no actions or if there is no interest to change that in any way, then we'll just approve it as it exists. Okay. So we're quickly going to go to item number 2, which is public hearings and other actionable items. And item 2A is ordinance number 1768. And I see our senior planner, CAC Kamak, joining us at the table. So I'm going to turn it to CAC.
Good afternoon, Senior Planner CAC Kamak. I don't have anything to add. I would recommend that the City Council open the public hearing. Oh, did I turn it off?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't have a presentation. Staff gave a presentation at the last meeting on June 5th. So we asked that the City Council open the hearing, take any public comments, and then close the hearing. And if the council wishes to adopt the ordinance amending the comprehensive plan, the capital improvements plan, future land use map, and the extension of the critical area ordinance. And if there are any questions, anything that has come up since last time, I'd be happy to answer.
Great. Okay, well, we'll start then by opening the public portion. And this would be a time if we've got anybody here from the public that would like to speak regarding ordinance number 1768 and resolution 1618. Now would be the time. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it then back to council. How would council like to move forward on this? Councilman Servadius.
Didn't want to be premature, but we covered it fairly thoroughly last time, so if no one has any comments. I move to adopt ordinance number 1768, adopting the 2016 comprehensive plan. Second. I won't read all that.
So we've got a motion by Councilor Servadius and a second by Councilor Campbell to approve ordinance number 1768. And I assume we'll do a second one for the resolution. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So ordinance number 1768 passes unanimously. Yes, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. And then I would also move to adopt resolution number 16-18, approving the time extension to complete the amendments to the critical area regulations as found in OHMC Title 20.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Servadius and a second from Councilor Munns to approve resolution number 16-18, approving an extension of time for the critical areas ordinance approval. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that also passes unanimously. Discussion now, I think, amongst council regarding our voting delegates for the AWT business meeting, which will be held next week in Everett. How would council like to move forward on that? I guess to begin with, okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
I volunteered to be one of the voting delegates. I'll be attending.
Okay. We've got one volunteer.
A volunteer.
Councilor Allenberg volunteers.
Well, that'll be the vote on Thursday?
Yes. So the voting delegates will actually vote on Thursday. Anyone else? We could use one more. Yes, Councilor Munn. So that's a volunteer, is it?
Oh, I am running, but I get to vote for myself.
So, any other discussion?
No, drink either anyway.
Okay, we've got 3 volunteers.
Excellent.
Dr. Marion, make note of that and pass it along, will you? Okay. Item number 3, departmental briefings. So I guess we've completed our action items, and we'll start then with item number 3A, which is Whidbey Island Marathon discussion. Yeah, Dr. Merriman.
I'll go ahead and take this one, but first, you may have noticed some balloons floating above us today, and I've been told to pass along the information that there are also cupcakes and some other goodies in the back room back here after the meeting to celebrate Mayor Severin's birthday today.
One of those things that's inevitable, right? Well, I guess
Can't get away with much.
yeah. Thank you very much.
So, the Whidbey Island Marathon update. What we would like to do today is just talk about 2 things. The first is where our finances are for this last year's event. This is as of May 31st. We're down to the last couple of invoices to pay and a little bit of money to come in yet. We have about maybe $2,700, $2,800 yet. There's a $2,500 grant from Island County coming in, and then a couple of expo booth rental fees that we're still waiting on. On the expenditure side, there are a couple little bills yet. I think everything is probably going to wash pretty close to that number that we have there at the bottom, looking at about $33,000. If you look at that compared to last year, you notice the difference is around $15,000 to $16,000, which is pretty close to the salaries and benefits that were allocated to this event last year. So essentially what that means is we're at a break-even position when compared to the prior year. And that is even with us changing some of the fee structures and things for the registration fees. So all in all, we're holding steady. It's not the decline that we had seen in the previous years. So that's a good thing. At the top of the page, you'll notice this is still coming out the same, even though we have about 90 less participants in total. On June 5th, Teresa Reed from the Elks Lodge is on our agenda to come and give their final wrap-up report to council. And we'll have the final information and more from the Elks Lodge at that time. One thing that this statement does not reflect is the cost of staff time. And it's one of the concerns we started having over the last couple of years is as the event has expanded, we've had more events. You know, where once we had a half marathon and a marathon, now we have a 10K, a 5K, and a children's run. There's beginning to be more and more time spent by staff in preparing for these. It's not quantified in this financial statement because it's not a separate payment out for overtime or anything like that. But it's something that we really want to keep a good eye on because not only is it in terms of money, it's also in terms of staff time away from other jobs that they have to do. So that's one thing we'll be looking at, trying to quantify that somewhat so we can keep track on those off-book type requirements that the city has. Is there any questions on the financial side of it at this point?
We'll start with Councilor Heisen.
This might be the same question that Councilman Olmberg raised his hand for, but I understand probably what will be your hesitance to throw any kind of number out there, but has staff given any just estimation? I mean, does each staff person know about the number of hours that this took them?
There's we've seen, or at least I've seen anywhere from like $11,000 to $15,000 as the quantified staff time on that. But that's just a real rough figure.
Okay, yeah, just have some ideas is helpful, thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Servades.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the staff time, would Public Works or whomever not track that if they're going out on the weekends setting up stuff? Surely that's tracked.
Some of that is, but the time that's not quite quantifiable, I would say, like last year, Kelly Mazzoli spent a considerable amount of time working with the Elks Lodge, even after on her own time and things like that. There's some areas like that where the time is not tracked. So that's where we need to get a little bit better figure for how much time are people actually spending that's not tracked in the city's accounting processes like that.
So that might dovetail into my next question, which is the last year's salary and benefits of 14 and change. What is that number comprised of?
That was comprised of some time spent on the website, and that we used to budget back in 2015, part of one FTE here at the city who spent some time in HR and some of their time as a website analyst.
Okay.
There was a decision made back in 2015 that that person's time would not be allocated to the marathon anymore. So that's why you see that in 2015, but not in 2016.
But someone's still doing that work, maintaining the website,
Correct.
just not accounted for at the moment.
Right.
Okay. Then the other two holes I'm looking at, promotional items, there's a zero balance for this year, and expo booths. What were the expo, why was the expo booths an expense? What are those?
Those are a couple of items that we still have yet to get wrapped
Okay.
up.
That's all.
Okay. Councilor Umber.
Well, some of my questions were answered, but I do have a question on under professional service coordinator. Is that the Elks?
It is the Elks.
And can you tell me what did the Elks do for $34,000?
It's a really good question. And they were primarily the main coordinator for the event on things like ordering shirts, ordering medals, getting a lot of the course layout done. There's quite a bit of staff time involved working in conjunction with them. But under their scope of services and their contract that we have them, those are the main items they're doing. Even advertising, holding the expo, doing those types of events for the marathon itself. I can get you a more comprehensive list of that if you need that.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Did we get our money's worth?
That's putting me on the spot, Mr. Alden. No, there's with any event, I think there are pros and cons and things that might be tough to work with. But they fulfilled the terms of their agreement. We probably had to nudge them on a couple of things just because of staffing. And remember, you're working with 500 volunteers on this event. So there's really strong areas, and there's some areas we could probably work with them to do a little better next year. Or next time if we do contract with them and go with them again.
Their contract expired
Correct.
at the end of this. And what is happening right now for advance promotion for this thing for next year? Who's doing that?
That's what we're going to talk about in just a minute here.
That's all. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Munt.
Do we know from the chamber if the hotels and stuff were full, the restaurants, if the revenue was up in town over this weekend? It was held on a Saturday, so they were hoping more people would stay over Saturday night and, maybe have breakfast or breakfast lunch on Sunday. So
I've heard comments from the hoteliers that they were full, even that a lot of the attendees were even coming from out of town, like in Anacortes, getting places like that. One of the things that I think would be a really good idea if we continue everything under this way in the future is setting it up with the hotels where they actually do some kind of survey. So when people are coming in to stay, we know exactly, here's how many heads came into the Best Western or Candlewood Suites. Doing something like that so we can better track what the overnight stay impact is of the event.
So we don't really know if they continued for 2 nights, or if they just did 1 night and then went home on Saturday then.
No, we don't have those analytics for that.
You might want to coordinate that question with Island Tourism. They're working on a system that gets the hotels to tell us how many people stayed and how long they stayed and keeping track.
Okay.
So before you duplicate the effort,
Okay. Anyone else at this point?
The next section on this, we want to talk about is the future structure of the marathon. We've had a lot of staff discussions on the impacts that we see and the things that put time demands on our city staff for this event. And as I mentioned before, it's grown more and more as the number of races in the event has increased, and things as far as moving the course around, there's quite a bit of work that's put into those. So what we're looking at is reevaluating the model that we do this marathon under. And we have 3 different items, or 3 different methods that I've listed here. First, under 2A, we can continue operating under the same model that we have in the past. And a little earlier today, emailed to you, you'll find 2 different RFQs. One of them is one that Dina Emery put together for us that will be for next year if we just do things the same way. The second way that we can do this is we can contract out the entire marathon event. And you'll also find there's an example, Pasadena has a marathon. They run an RFQ where they offer a certain payment and they contract with an entity to come in and run the entire event. They handle all of staffing, all of ordering, they do everything. So there's less impact on staff time than under our current model. And then Model C that we have under 2C is possible sale of the marathon. The city is receiving notice of interest from different parties. We've had 2 or 3 different parties actually ask us about if we would be interested in selling it. So those are the different options that we have right now. They each come with different pluses and minuses, and that's something that we would have to discuss. What I would like to do is be able to have the RFQ development and have that out before the end of this month. Wrapping up this last year's marathon and some of the dynamics we had in working with the Elks Lodge. Normally we would like to get an RFQ out sooner, but I think we need to get this answer first on what we want to do into the future. And as soon as we can kind of get a consensus on that, then we'll see about releasing the RFQ. So bullet number 4, what I have on here is interested in knowing City Council's consensus idea on how we want to look at next year's event. We have the 3 different methods I talked about, and I'd be interested in throwing that out for discussion to see what council would like to consider.
Thank you. I left you an voicemail earlier, Dr. Merriman. The RFQ that's dated in here, 2/24, we talked about that at our February 24th workshop, and this implies that it was sent out, responses due by March 31st, but this was never sent out.
No, it hasn't been sent.
Okay. All right, I'll stop there then for the moment.
It's Councilor Heisman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at options B and C, and I'm wondering about the financial benefit of contracting out the entire event. I realize that this is hypothetical, but I'm wondering what that would look like what that would cost. Obviously, we can't get through this without utilizing Public Works. And I'm also concerned in terms of possible sale of the marathon. Like, how do you put a price on that? I don't really understand how that would look. And I'm also concerned about the ability of whoever contracts and or purchases it to get the marathon done without all of that additional staff time from the city. Because I know, we got an email from Melissa Riker earlier, but in her experience with the marathon, the city has done a ton of the work. So I'm just wondering if it's realistic for someone to think that they can just purchase this and take this on because they might be expecting that same level of assistance when in reality it's going to be a lot more work on their part. So those are my concerns about both of those options. I agree that option A isn't one, but I'd like to get a clearer idea of what option B and C would look like logistically, if that makes sense.
Other input, questions? Councilor Servadius, go ahead.
So I'll jump back in there. My thoughts are, from a business standpoint, the current business model does not work. If we were to allocate the missing website development, upkeep, and whatever that was under salaries and benefits, in addition to parks, public works, wherever staff time is being spent, there's an additional $20,000, $30,000 not accounted for. So it's not in any way in the black for the city. We've had the discussion, do we do it as an economic driver possibly to help businesses in the community? And it's kind of a loss leader, if you will, for the city. I would be for B or C, possibly C, as long as whoever's purchasing this goes into it with open eyes. And then we need to make the decision, are we going to gift those services, Public Works, et cetera? We received an email not long ago from the chamber, I think we were all CC'd on that email, just asking us as we go through our budget process to give some more budget to those departments that spend, Public Works, Parks, that spend a lot of time helping set up for events. And as the number of events have grown, it's putting a strain on their budgets. So to what degree do we continue to support the events when we're putting a strain on their budgets, which might somehow hamstring the basic services that we're expected to provide as a city? So I think we need to take a step back and see really how much more we allocate towards events, and do we keep doing them, or do we look at selling it? And for a couple of years now, I'm almost leaning towards, I'd love to keep the event here, but at what point do we look at it from a financial standpoint that it just doesn't make a lot of sense for the city to do it? And as long as the buyer goes into that with open eyes, all the best.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'm leaning towards, for the city continuing ownership of the marathon because of the economic value that the local businesses benefiting, the hotel and other services. The staff recommendation is for either contracting it out, the entire marathon, or possible sale of the marathon. What would be how would you compare the economic benefit of that if you do those two, either sale or contracting out?
Really, in looking at that, the economic benefit in the community is probably similar under either alternative. You would have the same number of participants, say theoretically, show up under B or C if we keep it or sell it. Really, the area you run into when you look at contracting it out, one method might be to look back at our history and say, we see we've lost $50,000 a year. That doesn't measure staff time. And Mr. Savadius mentioned you may pay something for an event like this as an economic driver, which theoretically there's some merit to that. So maybe what we would want to be accomplishing between the two methodologies is to lessen the impact on staff. So if you were looking at this, really, I think from the economic value there, if we were to say, and this is just pulling a number out of the air, but look at this loss and say, for $40,000 a year, we'll give that to somebody to just come and run it. That's typically what we have paid out in cash. What that does, though, is if they were able to accomplish that with their own resources, we've just saved economically the value of our staff time that it takes to put on the event. So that might be one process there where item B is the method to go. We would still retain control over the marathon. We would have to say as the owner as far as what it has, but as far as the logistics of putting it on, we would have that burden lifted from us. It wouldn't be entirely, because you're still going to need police, you're still going to need Public Works, but it won't be entirely as in-depth as it has been in the past. Item C, obviously, that is selling the marathon and just getting out from under it completely. I think it would be smart to entertain some kind of caveats to that we want to sell it, but we want to keep it in Oak Harbor for a certain period of time. We might sell it knowing that we still have, if it's put on, there's still some staff time required as any other special event to do that. So I think those are at least a couple of the ideas between the different alternatives.
Also, historically, on the financial status of the marathon, it's always on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And if the city contracts it out, will the city be still putting some funds towards it? beside the 2% tax?
I would think so, and that's where I mentioned we may subsidize it in amounts similar to what our loss has been. You know, that would be the cash outlay for it. And as I mentioned before, we would save the staff time in that case. But I don't think we could contract it out and not have some kind of additional payment. You know, you would have in this case, you would have that, right now we're putting $30,000 into it and the deficit. You know, we'd have to come up with a way to establish that contract price we'd be willing to pay to have someone else do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We spend a lot of time trying to promote Oak Harbor, and this is a very positive event that brings people in here. Any one of the events that at least I've attended or been around when we've had it, there's been really, really good PR results out of the marathon for here. So we're paying something for promoting the city. We get great promotion from things like Race Week and other events here. We're right on the cusp of improving that Windjammer Park. It has the potential of being a showcase for this community. So I'm not supportive with the information that we have right now of considering the sale of the marathon. Contracting out the entire marathon event, I would consider contracting that out to a production company that has a really good track record of promoting the marathons and actually have verifiable results so we can cap our exposure. Continuing under the current model, I don't want to do that. So item B is probably more towards where I'm leaning, given the information that we have right now.
Other against, Councilor Heisen?
I agree with Councilman Almberg. My preference would be B, at least for now, because if we are able to take the entire package and contract it out, then that'll give us an opportunity to see what that looks like and how well it works before just unloading it onto somebody, basically, and letting them sink or swim. So we could try B and then just have a much better idea of logistically how that would work and what works and what doesn't, and then we can, if we like it, great, and if we feel like we need to move on from there, then we can. But at least it would still be ours to make a decision with, if that makes sense.
One thing to do, possibly, hearing that item B has some attraction, is when you get a chance, look at that Pasadena RFQ. They have some things in it that are strictly about Pasadena, so it wouldn't, pertain to us. But they do have a section on who would be qualified to contract it, is what you were mentioning, and it's a pretty stringent list of requirements to meet to be able to put that event on. But just look at it in terms of what things would we want to plagiarize out of their RFQ to put into one for us. Because there's some really good items, and I bet I've read probably 30 RFQs on marathons now, and this is one of the better ones that seems to approach that method B that we've talked about.
Councilor Lynch?
Thank you. I'm more in favor of B. We've got to give some relief to our staff. You can only volunteer for so long. 14 years military picnic, I'll show up and I'll hand out hamburgers or chips, but there's just a certain point that you've got to get new blood in there. I also think if we contract it out, it can't be somebody wanting to be an event planner. It's got to be someone who knows, no kidding, what they're doing. Because they'll have contacts with sponsors. To have an event successful, you've got to have sponsorship. That's where you're going to make your money on anything. The name of the city is important, and I think we still need to have some control. If you sell it, you have no idea. If it flops, it flops. If it doesn't, okay, it's no skin off ours, but it's the reputation of the town and our city, and I think we've gone through a lot. That's kind of why we bought it, to keep the name going and to build up the reputation. And I think with the new park coming in, there's some excitement. And I mean, on certain days of the week, I am amazed how many of electric wheelchairs or carts are going down the sidewalks, or people are just more walking places. If it's not just pouring down rain, they're walking, and I think this supports our type of living we want to promote in town. So I think contract it out, which will help relieve, but they're still gonna have to work with the police department, go through the permitting, all of that, but at least hopefully it won't be quite the burden that it was. But hire someone that has experience doing this, that will come in and can just take the ball and run with it and give us some reports, but, you know, we're not agonizing over it at the 12th hour. So, that's it.
Councillor Campbell.
I'm going to side with RFQ with B also, because there's two things that make me go that way. We can have in that RFQ and in that package that we're going to administer the contract. And all those things that we're worried about with the staff, part of the deal. They don't come to us and ask us to give them free, they have to buy it. And that's why I would go with B, because we could do that and we wouldn't be so worried about losing, well, I don't know about losing, but about spending all of our staff time and not getting anything out of it.
Okay. Councillor Sirvedi.
Thank you. The event production, I believe, is Orswell Events. Is that predominantly just race day? What is that expense for, do we know? I know there's a member in the audience who could probably answer that question.
I was looking to see if Dean was here, but yes, I think Orswell is pretty much, I know, and working during that day like that, Orswell had a very big presence, that event. Melissa's giving me the head nod back there that that's the case.
So, I guess depending whichever way we go, we could still, if we were paying a coordinator fee, or maybe not, if it's, we go with option B, there's still some event, well, I don't know. Just a lot of numbers in there. It seems like there would be interest in some organization being able to run for that, but the numbers just haven't penciled out. And I truly think when you throw staff time in there, there's a bigger deficit. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but if we want to try and retain control of the name, we'll still get all the economic upswing, or the community does, whether we're putting it on, if it's happening on Woodby Island in Oak Harbor, the benefit's here. It's just trying to shift the burden of those numbers, I think, to someone else. So.
And I think we noticed this last year. There are some ways we can be a little more efficient and save a little bit of money. We ran into cases as far as, say, like ordering shirts. You need to do that early, not later, to get better pricing and not get special order pricing, you know, things like that. I think the first at least 2 years we had the marathon, we were in the black. We had more of an emphasis on sponsors. We had some pretty big name sponsors. I think we were running in the 30 to 40,000 a year in sponsors. If you add that into this, you'd see our deficit evaporate. So I think there are some things we can see there, eliminate some of the redundancies, be a little more timely on our ordering, and some things there that could help us out on the economics of this.
Okay.
Other input, questions, thoughts? So you have your marching orders now?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Merriman. Okay, item number 3B, discussion regarding implementation of Portland Loo.
It's the little things. The V gets its own power plant.
Same thing as it? So here to discuss the Portland Loo Oh, before I do that, I should have introduced the other person that we have here at the table with us. Has nothing to do with Lou, by the way. But, a little bit back at you. Our city, interim city police administrator, Terry Gallagher is here with us today, and he's been doing a great job across the street in the police department. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for sitting at the table.
Yes, you bet, you bet. And to discuss the Lou is our Public Works Director, Kathy Rosen, and she has with her our city engineer, Joe Stoll. Take it away.
Mayor, members of the council, at your April 5th, 2016 council meeting, there was a motion by Councilmember Servadius, which was seconded by Councilmember Heisen. Motion passed unanimously, and it was asking staff to make a presentation regarding the possible implementation of the Portland Lou for the city of Oak Harbor within the next 90 days. So that's why we're here today. And Councilmember Servadius also asked for cost estimates for a Portland Lou project. So, what is a Portland Lou? It was originally developed and has been patented by the city of Oregon, and it's manufactured and marketed by a company out of Portland called Madden Fabrication. Portland decided to get out of the actual marketing business, but they do receive royalties. It's a prefab, single occupancy, gender neutral restroom unit, and it was designed to be durable in an urban environment, and it was designed with safety in mind. So all of the photos that you'll see today are installation at Rainier Beach Pool in Seattle. So what are we going to need to be looking for when we build new public restroom facilities? We need to first of all, be compliant with the regulations, including ADA, as well as the Washington law against discrimination. There's been a lot of talk in the news about transgender restrooms. So we do have a law in Washington that says all public restrooms, people can go in based on their gender, whether they're segregated or not. We're also looking for cost effective to install and maintain in a place where the public feels safe. The current design of restrooms focus more on privacy, and when it's very private, sometimes people like to do nefarious things. So we are going to be looking for something that's wheelchair accessible and room to have an assistant go in or a service animal. And then, as I mentioned, we do have the Washington law against discrimination, and basically that says at publicly owned buildings where there are gender segregated facilities, individuals must be permitted to use the facility of the gender they identify with, regardless of the individual's biological sex. So a lot of organizations are going more towards single occupancy, gender neutral facilities as an option to meet that law. So we're also looking for something that's cost effective to install and maintain, and Hank was unable to come up with more graphic photos of the vandalism that we experience in our public restrooms. This door was ripped off. We've had sinks ripped off of the walls, graffiti, vandalism of the coin box for the showers. So we're looking for something that's durable in our coastal environment and can stand up to heavy use. It's got to be easy to clean and repair, so simple parts and easy access to it, and something that's graffiti resistant and again, simple to repair. Place where the public feels safe. So we're looking for something that would reduce the hotel effect. Again, if it's very private and comfortable, people may want to sleep there, they do their laundry, they bathe there, which makes it uncomfortable for other people to go into that public restroom and use it for its original purpose. So we want something that is not quite so private that people want to linger. We also want it not so private that people feel comfortable engaging in illegal activities, and we'd like to have some sort of external way to monitor when it's in use. So the Portland Loo, again, remember it was designed with safety in mind, designed for an urban environment. It has many of the features that we are looking for. It complies with the regulations. It's got this very large interior, so it's ADA accessible. A mom with a stroller could go in there. A bicycle rider could take his or her bike in there with them. And it would also meet the Washington law against discrimination. And you can see that it's very simple inside. There's not a lot of things that can be vandalized. So it's durable.
Is there a wash station in there too?
So there is not a wash station. Oh, there you go. But that is hand sanitizer, and the wash station is actually located on the exterior. So they're compliant with ADA regulations and the Washington law against discrimination. They're durable. They're heavy gauge stainless steel, powder coating. Joe's pointing to the hand wash facility, and there's a close-up of the hand wash facility later on. It does come with a graffiti resistant finish. It's got recessed LED lights, commercial grade stainless steel toilet fixture, all heavy duty fittings, and there is freeze protection. They've got some of these in Alaska, and there are some, I think there's one now at Harvard, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Very simple design, so it's easy to repair and maintain. It sits on a concrete pad. It's got rear utility panel for electrical and plumbing controls, and there's a maintenance hose bib for cleaning. And that's the hand wash facility. It's it's push button, cold water. Anybody walking by could use it. So this is crime prevention through environmental design is what this is called. So you've got these louvered panels which allow visibility of the floor while still protecting the privacy of the occupant. So they call that kind of community surveillance. It's still private, but not so private that you can't count how many feet are in there. The external lighting indicates when the loo is occupied, so that allows the police or the park staff to just, as they're passing by, know whether it's occupied or not. It has, they come with a skylight for additional interior lighting. They fit into an average parking space. I'm going to go back to this. This outside frame on the door here can be used for art or advertising. It comes standard with solar panels. The AC electric wiring is an additional cost. And there is the cost. For a single unit with the AC power option, $90,000 base price. Adding the hand wash facility is $1,500, about $2,600 to ship it, for a total of $94,100. That doesn't include the concrete pad or getting the utilities, water, sewer, power to it. But you can get a 5% discount on an order of 5 or more units. Did we answer all your questions?
Well, thank you. So, questions, Councilor Holmberg?
Thank you, Mayor. We are planning to put restrooms in the park. Part of it is mitigation for the wastewater treatment plant that phases in with that. So, are you anticipating that we would phase these in or do them all at once?
Well, my preference, if you're asking me, my preference would be to do them all at once, if there's funding available. But as part of the project, our SEPA requires us to replace one restroom.
Okay. And then in addition to even the slab, you're going to have some underground utilities to go out there. Will it be electrical? And there will be water? And there will be waste line, a sewer line that goes into that area. Do you have those services available in areas where you're anticipating placing these, or do we have to run new services to them from, let's say, the wastewater treatment plant?
Well, I think, and if Mr. Powers can assist me here, we have a master plan, which things may move around a little bit, and if it's deemed most feasible and less impactive, say for archaeological reasons, we may choose in some cases to put new restroom facilities at the same location as the existing.
Okay. My instinct is you take $100,000, this plus the slab, maybe even a little more than that. My gut reaction to that is you cannot go through the permitting process, you can't go through the design process and the construction process for this price, for $100,000 a unit. I don't think you can do that and then have long-term maintenance that you would have with the building as opposed to supposedly this system.
I think there are other options, like what you have out at Deception Pass Bridge, which are single occupancy, gender neutral restroom stalls. But those don't have the crime prevention through environmental design. So people can go in there and stay in there for very long periods of time, and you don't know what's going on in there. So we also have a lot of vandalism, and that's not included in our ongoing costs. And so these are pretty much vandal proof. I mean, they might mess around with the push button for flushing the toilet or something, but there's not a lot that they can rip off the wall or smash or break. And Hank saw these. Hank actually came back from a conference prior to Councilmember Servatius bringing this up and said, this is, if we can, this is what we need to do. Because Seattle is having really good results from it. And then you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of it? If somebody is not comfortable going in there or not comfortable sending their children in there, we've defeated the whole purpose of providing those public facilities. So I think this is a good option for what we need, and then with the changing regulations, it's that much more of a win.
Thank you. I think they look good. I would hope that we could tear down the one across from the bus station, Flintstone Park, and put 2 or 3 there, because that's just been a huge problem. I don't know if there's any way to put one downtown. I mean, because that's merchants and people coming to festivals and stuff. We don't have anything downtown, but I mean, I know we have sewer in the park already, we've got water, it's just a matter of where the lines go, and you may as well plan for it. As long as we're moving that dirt and moving things around, I think we need to plan for extra water lines or electric lines that can plug in whatever we need to support our carnivals and things like that. But I like the idea that it is resistant. There's not a lot you can break off of it, and I don't know how paint goes on it. Maybe we can have an alarm if they spray or something.
Well, it is. It's got a coating on it so that the graffiti comes off
good
easier. And most of the photos were Joe's. He was just there last week.
I went and checked out the facilities.
So if you have any questions, that's fine.
As I understand it, the panels, a large number of them are replaceable too, very easy of maintenance. And I actually had a hard time finding them in the park. They're kind of centrally located, and they blended in enough that it took me a minute to track them down. I actually had to ask somebody. And they're clean, easy. It looked like somebody tried to mark on the outside of one of them, but wasn't very successful. The water fountain between them was kind of a nice touch. I pictured like what they have down on Pioneer Way during events, the one with you fill your water bottle out. So generally, I was pretty impressed. I don't think you'd want to hang out in there too long. given the climate we have around here. I think I can maybe count on one hand how many days it's been calm and not breezy. So you wouldn't want to hang out in there for too long, except for what you needed to do. But they're extremely roomy. I mean, I think you could have a mom stroller, bicycle, and, you know, be able to move around still. So I was pretty impressed.
I think they would probably, because the symbol parks, that they would go up faster than waiting for, okay, what does the design look like? What's the outside material gonna be? What's this gonna be? We know, unless there's other colors, but I mean, basically pick a color and say, that's it, and where you're going to stage them. So I would think it would also be faster than the old method. So I think it's a good idea.
So if you're out and about, in this document, at the back of the document is a list of where there are Portland movies. If you're so inclined to look at them.
And if you happen to be down near Rainier Beach swimming pool, the pool down there shows up pretty quick on Google Maps. And you park near the pool and look up the hill towards where the brand new playground is. You can go check them out yourself and see what you think.
Councilor Surveys?
Thank you. Thank you, obviously, staff, for the report. This came up at the Parks Board meeting as well on Monday, and the Deception Pass restrooms came up, and having 3 younger children, we can hardly get off the island before somebody's got to go, and we've stopped there many a time. And nothing against our wonderful Parks Department, state parks, but they're pretty gross. There's not much airflow. They're very simple cinder block stalls, and I don't know how often they clean them, but they're usually, you know, it's like hoping the kids can levitate and take care of business. I would eventually like to see these, you know, to whatever degree we're able to budget for them. I had envisioned, you know, maybe we had 1 a year or 2 a year, and it takes us 5 years, but they're sprinkled throughout town in very public, especially in Windjammer, public spots that are well lit, so there's no incentive to hang out. There would be very little incentive to even try and vandalize it because it's right underneath or near a well-lit area. So that if someone was coming through in the dawn or dusk hours, they'd still feel comfortable going in there. But I also think, is it volunteer park? What is the park by the pool?
That's volunteer park.
You know, there's a lot of activity that goes on there, and I think it's serviced by a porta potty, a single porta potty.
There might be a couple.
Okay, so eventually we ought to look at trying to get those integrated throughout town, because there's a lot of kids over there, and I've seen those blown over, you know, and so I wouldn't want to inherit that. But, you know, I'd like to see wherever, if staff thinks it's a good idea, and my peers do as well, to try and just plan and incorporate 1 or 2 of these a year, budget-wise if we can, and continue to sprinkle them throughout town. And possibly, as we've said before, figure out a way to integrate them into downtown or the central business district to solve that problem during events.
Thank you. Councilor?
I'm all for this, since there's only 2 things in our entire world that we have no control over. This satisfies both of those. However, the question is, this can't be the only design on the face of the earth. Did you look at something else, or did you just settle on this one?
The motion that we were addressing was for Portland News, but I did look to see if there was something similar. There was a company at one time, I don't believe they're still manufacturing them because can't find them on their website anymore. It was kind of a knockoff, and they were actually involved in a lawsuit with the city of Portland on the design, and they lost that lawsuit. So I think the closest thing that I've seen is similar to what's out at Deception Pass, the single occupancy, gender neutral. I suppose you could stick build something like that.
Mayor Protem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, what was it? Yeah. Thank you. I would agree with Mr. Sebadas, but we need the bathroom or restroom, Portland Blue, in downtown. There are 2 bathrooms now in the park, one in Princeton Park and one in the Windjammer Park. And now for special events, people looking for very nice bathroom, not one of those porta potties. And I would agree also looking forward to this and building probably one at a time, depending on the finance portion of that city can afford. I've been to I think a couple of the loos, not exactly Portland loos, where they're self-cleaning loos. Probably they're more expensive than this one. You have to clean it manually. But it would be nice to have one in downtown, right there in Pioneer Way somewhere. Have you identified any location beside downtown?
Yeah, kind of, but not really. I think that would be something that we'd have to talk about.
Councilor Munns?
I'm looking at the cement. Do we get any points if that's a permeable, kind of like NFCU has in their parking lot? I mean, does that help towards a grant if it's on? I mean, as you say, cement costs money, and there's a lot of cement. Well, it has cement patties all over. I mean, is there something? I'm just throwing it out.
Sure.
If we're gonna be green, let's be green and do it right. And I see Cat smiling. It's an idea. I have no idea. I'm just throwing it out. That instead of asphalt or the cement, you want it to be able to be cleaned. But if there is maybe an option of a permeable surface that would, how they do, all of a sudden they have a regulation and you can't be grandfathered, and we just put money into something and now it has to be changed because they changed the rules. So I'm throwing it out there as an idea to stay ahead of the game. If we're gonna put these down and have pads, then is there an option that maybe we should look at? That's all.
The surrounding areas could definitely, we could definitely include that. I don't know that I would do that around the facility itself, just for ease of maintenance, but certainly the areas, sidewalk in front and around it, you could look at doing something like that.
Okay, other questions, input, ideas? Okay, thank you.
Start this that way.
So we will at this time move to item number 3C, Whitby Avenue Crosswalk. And I think our city engineer, Joe
I am.
Stoll.
I'm gonna try and take this one on. We'll see how this goes. So, are they making their way around okay? We're also going to have copies of this on the overhead. I just know how sometimes with stuff like this, it's a little bit easier to look at it on paper. So it's been a long time since we've talked about the crosswalk, and quite frankly, we're getting a little bit of harassment from the granting agency about what we're planning to do. So I thought it was time to come back and just kind of tell you what where we're at and what my thoughts are, and kind of what staff's thoughts are on proceeding with the crosswalk. So I should have done a backed up map. I'll get to that in a minute. But if you're not familiar with the area, this is north is up on this map. North is up on this map. SARS is down in the lower left corner. The Harbor Towers is in the upper left. The Barron Drive leading up to the roller barn is up towards the top of the map. And off to the right, just out of view, is SR20, and off to the left, just out of view, is Oak Harbor Street. So we have a known concern about pedestrians trying to get across the street here, jaywalking. And we were asked some time back to come up with a solution on how to address that. So we brought in a Transpo Group a while back, a traffic engineering firm. And this is one of two proposals that they had, that they brought forward as a potential way to address the issue that we presented to them. And so it's a crosswalk right at Barron, and goes across the street and ends just before the bus stop. It would include a raised curb area in the middle of the road, and that's to make sure that the pedestrians are protected. So you get halfway across the street, you've got a refuge area. There'd be the LED flashing signs that the pedestrians could activate, overhead lighting and whatnot to make that work. And then we'd maintain a turn pocket, a protected turn pocket to turn into SARS and the other businesses that are in that south side of the street. What this does is it creates a situation where we have a right in, right out for Barron Drive. So if you're going south on Barron, you wouldn't be able to make a left and go out towards SR20, so it kind of complicates things a bit. This would also require the relocation of a driveway. There's a driveway to the apartments immediately adjacent to Barron Drive that we would have to relocate further up to the north along here. And we've spoken with this property owner, and in general, they're okay with the idea. It would require some restriping and rearrangement of the parking stalls. I think we'd probably lose one or two stalls in there, but it's in general would work. Clever enough, 430 feet to the west is an existing crosswalk at a signalized intersection. So I have a little bit of concerns. It's not terribly far away. Although those that have difficulties with mobility find it a little bit more challenging to go up to the intersection. So this, I've zoomed back. This is where my issues start coming into play. We've got all our, just for orientation, we've got SR20 and Whitby and Oak Harbor Street and Southwest 3rd Street. We've got the proposed crosswalk there highlighted in red. And there's existing crosswalks. You wouldn't have to walk more than 200 yards in either direction, wherever you are on the roadway, to get to an existing crosswalk. And then you combine that with upwards of 8 driveways from businesses and apartment complexes, and it makes a very, very complex situation. That's how we ended up with the configuration we did. On the north side, we have the Boys and Girls Club and the Roller Barn and high-density residential and apartment complexes. And on the south, we have shopping. We got the new Tractor Supply and SARS, and there's Payless Shoes in there, I think, and there's a couple other businesses. Point being is we know there's a situation here where we put where people live on one side and where they want to go on the other. Mm-hmm. And however, we do have the existing crosswalks that they can use safely to cross the street. And this is something we could address too, is there's also a bus stop on the south side of the street right across from Barron. We haven't had much opportunity to talk with Island Transit. We've got new opportunities now, I think, that we could strike up conversation with them about maybe adjusting the route so that at least the bus stop might be on the north side of the road and reduce the number of people jaywalking to get to the bus stop. So there's our, right in, right out situation when we put that island in there to protect the pedestrians as they cross. So how do you get to where you need to go? So if you're if you're coming from the Boys and Girls Club and you're trying to get out to SR20 to go whatever direction, you've got to come out to Whitby, over to Oak Harbor, down to 3rd, and come out near the gas station there. You could take the back route, which is always fun. There's a whole bunch of really stern speed bumps back there. If you've ever driven it, you got to come to a stop for those things. They're pretty aggressive, I don't know. Anyway, and you come out there by Flyers. There's another route you could take. You snake your way through the apartment complex, come out on Oak Harbor Street, and work your way back out to 20. But, you know, you consider the traffic flow. You got high-density residential, parents picking up and dropping off their kids at the Boys and Girls Club. I think we're going to irritate a few people if we make them start taking all these alternate routes. And anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. So there is another route, which I didn't do a good job on my animation on here, but they could come out, make the right-hand turn into the turn pocket, dodge into SARS, and then come back out.
That's what everybody will do.
So
That's what everybody will do.
that's what I would do. So then we're promoting, you know, public that's ends up being the solution, and now we've just made really good friends with SARS. Anyway, so I'm sorry.
And there's an electric button that they can say, hey, I want to go across the street, and all of a sudden it flashes and the traffic's supposed to stop?
There would be, and there's different ways of doing it. We haven't gotten to the point of which type we would use. It could be something like what we have for the Safe Routes to Schools, all those. It could be something more aggressive where there's this hawk system where it flashes yellow and then actually goes red.
What I worry about is, I like the idea of the bus stop being relocated on the other side, but there's 3 or 4 times a day, you've got 20, 60 buses going through there, and all of a sudden someone does that light, and I can see some kids have fun with that, and now they can't get through here, they can't get through there. I mean, so I worry about that, just stopping the people in the middle. But the bus stop is a good idea.
It's something we should pursue further, whichever direction we go, because I think it would help with some things. But that's a challenge for another day, I think. So okay, so you know, you're going to drop your kids off at the Boys and Girls Club. You are going. You're coming from where the elementary schools are at, you know, or one of the elementary schools, or two of them are. And now you can't make a left in here anymore because we put in that island. So you really have very few choices on how they get in there. I guess you could do that other loop through SARS and come. I don't know. It just makes a weird way to get there. So we've had some internal discussions for quite some time, and we've asked a few questions. So one of the things we did is called up WCIA. Hey, what do you think? And on paper, they say we think it's not a very good idea to have mid-block crossings. They're dangerous and can be a problem for us. But I think the tone is we really don't like them. This is a problem. Mm-hmm. There's already existing crosswalks, like I was saying before, 200 yards either way, and you're at a crosswalk with a signalized intersection. And there's no guarantee that pedestrians will actually use the new facilities. We've chosen a spot which we believe would capture the most of them, but they're currently jaywalking and not using crosswalks as is, so I'm not sure what guarantee there is that they'd use a new one. And I think that having a right in, right out at Barron would have unintended consequences. We do definitely have phone calls about needing something addressed at this area, but I think if we limited access for vehicles, I think the phone calls would be equal or more because we did this improvement. I personally feel it's gonna cause more problems than it solves, and so that's why I've been kind of that's why I'm coming back to you today, is to take a second chance talking to council and see what your thoughts are.
I can tell you that since taking office now, I've been involved with the island transportation people there. Just recently, Island has created their own transportation agency, Island County. We did at the time we got started with this project and a request to the old. It was a combination of Island and Skagit transportation counties, and We actually did secure funding to do something here or at least partial funding. And I know that the transportation people are anxious to find out whether we're going to utilize this at this time or not. And I think that's another reason that we're trying to get a decision from council. I personally have had my own problems with a crosswalk that is close to an intersection by where I live, and it also is crosswalk that is, there's quite a bit of traffic, but there are only 2 lanes of traffic, and people are anxious to get through intersections and often not anxious to stop for people in our other crosswalks. So, that's a concern to me, and personally, I see this crosswalk, no matter how well lit it is, if we're going to go ahead with this, I have concerns, 5 lanes of traffic, and with all the other potential problems that this could create. I have to agree with Mr. Stoll that this could be, might create other problems and even be a danger. Our insurance carrier has said that. So I guess with that, we'd like to find out from council how you feel today. So, Councilman Campbell?
If this crosswalk, and I'm not for or against this crosswalk, but if this crosswalk is a danger, why don't we have problems up at the same crosswalks up when they come across from the high school? They got a stoplight. Hundreds of kids go across that street all the time, and I don't know that they've ever had an accident. It's controlled, but we ought to consider that also when we're talking about whether this is dangerous or not. Second item is that, and this has been, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, there were people in town who were complaining about from the driveway, it goes yeah, from the one that's where they make a left-hand turn there, a right-hand turn.
The Baron, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, okay.
Right here.
From there to Oak Harbor, across the street, and from Oak Harbor back down to SARS, being terribly hard for people in wheelchairs and walkers and crutches, because the street or the sidewalks are not very good, and it's tough for them to get back. That was discussed, like I said, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. Nothing's ever been done about it, but it's still an issue that needs to be looked at.
I think
You were not here when it was talked about.
No, I know, but I have been watching what's going on in front of Harbor Towers, and I think they've cut down a number of trees that were the root structure was causing the asphalt or the
Part of
buckle
the issue was width, but the rest of it was to try to get over a wheelchair if you got a ledge this high because the sidewalk is separated.
And I
That
think
kind of an issue.
I think they've ground a lot of it so that it's a bit smoother. I know it's not perfect, but I think they've tried to do some work on it. I think a lot of that was Harbor Towers that did that work.
On the other side of the street too?
I'm not sure of any issues on the other side. I'll go take a look.
Councilman Humphrey?
Are we finished, Jim? I'm not going to support this design for the same reasons that were posted up there. The engineers have looked at it, your comments on that. And for the following reasons, the ones that are posted there, and for these reasons. We are making it convenient to cross the street, but it doesn't appear to me that we're making it safer for pedestrians. We're inviting them into a conflict with vehicles, and we are not making it safer for vehicle traffic. It's really congested with these left turn, right turns, and we are also channeling traffic, public traffic through private property. People are going to do that. People are going to take the route of least resistance. They're going to right out left into SARS, And we may or may not get pushback from them. If it was my shopping center, I would not want traffic to be driving through there just as a shortcut. Somebody has to maintain that parking lot too. The other thing that's not presented here that is factual, you made some comment about the inconvenience of wheelchair and crutches access up to the signal. The fact is that the distance between the porte-cochere and the sidewalks is approximately 75 feet. And the elevation drop, the elevation between the sidewalk and the porte-cochere is approximately 7 feet. From the point of the driveway in front of the porte-cochere to the signal intersection is approximately 140 feet, 150 feet, right in that range. And it also has an elevation gain of 7 feet. So it's nearly twice as steep going from the porte-cochere to the sidewalk. So people are going to have more trouble going from their building to the public sidewalk than they are when they're on the public sidewalk going up to the signal intersection. They're going to have that whether they go out to Barron driveway or whether they're going to come out to the sidewalk. So I'd submit that if people have a problem with the elevation and the slope there, it exists from the building to the sidewalk and not from the sidewalk to the signaled intersection. And why are we spending, regardless if it's a grant, why are we spending approximately $250,000 for convenience when it doesn't make it safer for pedestrians or vehicles, and it doesn't solve the elevation problem? The issue about the sidewalk, the lifting of the sidewalk by the trees, I had a conversation with Hazel Wellebear, who is the manager of this thing, and directed her to our ordinance about their responsibility to maintain their sidewalks. And those are her trees. She thought the city should take care of those trees. Those are part of the trees that were required for them to put in their binding site plan. Those are their trees. They took them out and made those corrections. They also ground down the lifted sidewalk so that it flows through there pretty easily. And I think, don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that she probably counseled with her management staff and legal department and insurance, because I asked her to perhaps check with them to see what their exposure is once they check the ordinance on this. So it's passable, but it doesn't solve the problem because of the elevation between the door to the sidewalk. And I do not support spending the money when it doesn't really make it safer.
Councilman Spades.
I'll echo all of those sentiments. When this first came up, I went down there and I watched it for a while. And while we want to accommodate, Harbor Tower as we would any of our citizens, the people that I saw running across the street, because you have to run, did not have mobility issues. And so I did not see one person with a mobility issue, and maybe that makes sense, but everyone I saw went running across, and I think it would be interesting to see how many are truly going to the bus stop versus maybe the shopping complex. And so maybe the bus stop is a much simpler solution, trying to take that to the north side. My concern, besides everything that's been voiced on the traffic flow, is because we used to live just east there on Woodby Avenue. There's a lot of stale yellow running, I'll call it that, trying to get in the morning over to Highway 20. And so if you have people progressing east to west, west to east, there's not much distance there. If they're trying to get through a yellow and somebody steps off the curb, like Ms. Munn said, you're coming to a stop in a hurry or you're not. I think as Mr. Stovall, I'm glad your last traffic flow, or one of your last traffic flow ones, was maybe not the most legal, but what will be the preferred route is going to be looping right around there. You see it all the time in your Burger King. There's turns that should not be made. People trying to head, I guess it would be north on 20, that are looping by the DK Market. They come out there and Woodby Coffee. They do some really funky stuff trying to get around those islands. So to me, that's a concern. I wish there was a solution. It's very odd to watch human behavior. I see it often by Whidbey Island Bank and Walmart. People will jaywalk across 20, continue in the same direction they were going to the crosswalk, and then continue on. I don't know why they didn't just stay another 50 yards on their path and cross safely, but I watch people run across there also all the time. Suggested it before with the former administration. I would suggest it again. I'm going to call you our interim police chief. It's less words. But some possible targeted, if not ticketed enforcement, some reminders, warnings that this is unsafe behavior, and it's I'm assuming a ticketable behavior to jaywalk there. So just some general reminders, but some targeted, if enforcement's the right word, in that parking lot might change some behaviors as well and make it safer, because it's not that far, and I have walked it. It has been ground down. When they replaced those trees, I think all of those issues have been dealt with. So I don't know if that money can be redirected in the grant to help move the bus stop, or if it has to be used just for that.
It cannot be redirected.
Even the
We
same.
have to reapply.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. I agree, that was the thing that I wrote down, was traffic enforcement, and not necessarily of the jaywalkers, but of anyone that is behaving unsafely in their vehicles across those 4 lanes. The whole reason that we identified this was because of safety concerns. And I agree 100% that this poses more of a safety concern than the current situation. I know the fire chief can probably attest to how dangerous that stretch of road is or isn't. But it seems to me that the reason it's not safe is because people aren't using the crosswalk. So I'm not, I don't want to say it this way, but I'm not really sure how that becomes our problem when we, that's just the only way I can think of to say it, but we provide crosswalks on either side, and yeah, it might be inconvenient to walk half a block to it, but I'm not sure where the city's obligation begins and ends and the citizens' obligation begins and ends there. It's all kind of muddled together, and there's no way to do it even remotely safely without limiting that Barron Drive access to right turn only. There's just not. I mean, I've agonized over this 100 times. So to me, currently, I think our most practical solutions are to look into moving the bus stop. I think it's a really excellent suggestion, and traffic enforcement. I mean, if somebody has to sit out there and send a message about unsafe behavior, because this is the unsafe behavior on the part of the people walking and driving, and they need to be made aware of that. They might not realize how unsafe it is. So, honestly, I don't see any other solution. I mean, so many people have been working on this for so long. I don't see any other solution except for those 2 scenarios, which might help. The bus stop might help a lot.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I know that this area is an accident-prone area, but not related to those people crossing from in between, going back and forth on Barron Street. The accident-prone area is the egress and ingress from SARS Market. I know for the fact, because one time I was coming from Oak Harbor Road, making a turn going east on the outer lane of Whidbey Avenue. I was hit by a truck. The truck hit my car. Imagine, it was totaled. How can you imagine car was totaled coming from SARS Market? Then about 6 years later, my daughter-in-law's car was also hit from that area, was also totaled. So the problem is not across Barron Street, and I don't think putting a crosswalk there will solve that problem. The problem is for that ingress and egress coming from SARS Market. So I don't think it's necessary to put a crosswalk there. It's pretty close to the signal light from Oak Harbor Road. People can use those crosswalks from those corner. So
Other, anyone else? Okay, I guess we've heard from council. Thank you. So we are moving to item number 3D, the WASDOT Sharps Corner project. And it looks like our city engineer is still with us, Joe Stoll.
And I brought all these candies here today for you to keep everything rolling.
Nice try.
That's all right. I made a funny about my favorite candies, Kit Kats, and guess what you see a lot of in here. So this will be a quick just update. We're all familiar to some degree with the improvements proposed at Sharps Corner. The project itself, this is up at SR 20, and you can see where it heads off to the north Anacortes up in the upper left-hand corner. There's two roundabouts that are being proposed. One of them this is at Sharps Corner here, and then there's another one further out at Gibraltar or Miller, whatever you want to call it. It's a different name on either side of the street. And then the improvements actually extend quite a ways away from those roundabouts in either direction. So they've gone away from the underpass. So that helps us out a lot, and there's a lot of reasons why we're interested in this. One, because it affects access to the island, that's the clear easy one. But also our water line from Anacortes to the city passes through this intersection, and improvements that they make here, we could have to potentially relocate water utilities to accommodate whatever construction they come up with. Last I heard is I think we're doing okay, but as far as that goes, but there's still a long road ahead. And then this is not a very good scan, but that's just a little bit of a close-up of that. You'll see along the north side, there's kind of a pass-through. So if you're going to Anacortes, you don't even go through the roundabout. You don't have to, I suppose. If you wanted to be clever and get around somebody, you could stay in the right-hand or the middle lane and go through the roundabout.
Say that again, Joe, where of Van Orient?
So there's this is a pass through, so
okay.
Cars don't have to stop or go through the roundabout. If you're really clever, you could go through the roundabout and just dodge right out here and merge back in with traffic.
We would think of that.
Well, I thought of the SARS thing too. I mean, if there's an easier way to do it, man, I'm all for it. So, but it does make for an interesting interaction here, where cars are going south towards Oak Harbor versus the cars coming from Anacortes and maybe wanting to go to Burlington, Mount Vernon. I'm interested to see how that works. There's also, if you're going from Oak Harbor to Burlington, there's a bypass here where you don't have to go into the roundabout and just swing right through. And yet again, you can stay in the roundabout and through if you'd like. If you're getting frustrated with the guy in front of you, you can give it a shot, I guess. Main point of this is there's an open house on the 23rd, and it's in Anacortes at the middle school. I have several phone calls in to WashDOT, to different people. I pulled this together pretty quick, so I don't blame them for not having gotten back to me yet, but I'm trying to have them come here and do a presentation for us as well. If I hear in the next couple days that's a possibility, I'll let you know, so you don't feel like you need to drive over there to see their presentation. We'll just bring them here.
You know, at our last transportation meeting in Cookville, our Commissioner Jill Johnson was, that we had a WASDOT person at that meeting, and she requested the same thing, and was, pretty adamant about the importance of us having at least one meeting here. So you might remind whoever you talk to that this isn't the first request.
Oh yeah, I'll let them know the mayor and council want them here. So
Great.
They better hop to it. And I'm sure, they've been very accommodating. If you remember, they stopped by a while back and gave a little, just a brief update on things, but didn't want to miss the opportunity to let you know that there's an open house in Anacortes, if you happen to be over that way or would like to go to it. And I thought I had another slide, but it's not talking about. Do I not, Jim? Short story is if you want to learn more about it, you can. It's really easy to find. You just go on your favorite search engine that you like looking up things on the internet, and look up WSDOT, WashDOT, Sharps Corner, and it's the very first thing that comes up. You can go to their webpage, and they've got a rundown in the history and schedule. This is looking pretty far out. The schedule, at least, is shown on their website. Shows construction in like 2018. So it's a little ways out yet, but they're just trying to stay ahead with the public information. And that's really all I got, other than the candies.
And where did you get those candies?
Yeah.
From right in front of me. They're so, isn't that nice?
So
Yes.
before we're done on that, I did have a meeting with the commanding officer yesterday, and I think I told you at our staff meeting that we're meeting once a month, and so we had a communication about the potential that they will be involved because they buy water from Anacortes also. So is there any idea about costs in 2018? I mean, when will we have an idea about that?
The last I saw, and don't quote me on this, was the total project, they were looking like 13.5 million. What of that is water system relocation is unknown.
So we don't know when.
No, and by the way, the new CO is a very good communicator, because about an hour after you met with them, I think I got an email from Barry Christensen.
Okay.
So they're on board and know it's coming.
Good, okay, thank you. Okay, item number 3E. No more questions on that, I assume. Oh, Dr. Merriman?
I just had one quick comment. A group of us from over met with the city of Anacortes on Monday to talk about other water-related items. And Fred, their public works director, made the comment that they're looking at the water line movement component of that project. Right now, he had just a tentative feeling that it would not impact us too much, just the way the layout is. But they're going to be working on putting that information together for us and give us an update on what that might involve. So we are looking at that part, and Anacortes is working on that already for us.
Great, good, thank you. Great, thank you. And Fire Department feasibility study update, and our own Chief Merrill, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. I sent out a revision to the feasibility study that we got from Fair and Peers. There was 2 errors on page 10. I resent that to you today. It makes no difference in the actual report. It's just they had some highlights in the wrong positions on the map. So there is a change there. Talk some more? Let's see. I went to Westport over the weekend. It rained really hard, really bad, and Westport was really quiet and dead, and there was nobody there. It's a sad economy down there. You want me to keep talking some more, Jim? Yeah. About anything? Yeah. Okay. Gosh, what topic do I want to take on? June is a great month for birthdays, Mayor. Absolutely the best month in the entire world. Yeah, absolutely. Genevieve's birthday is tomorrow. Yeah.
Tell us about the candy.
Pardon me?
Tell us about the candy.
The candy? It's made up of chocolate, and there's some nuts in some of it, and there's wafer bars.
Not courtesy of engineering?
It's not courtesy of engineering, contrary to what Mr. Stoll believes. I only bought the Kit Kats because that's what I wanted today, but you're good. The bird did come back and tell me what you were looking for, so that's why we have Kit Kats. You want me to keep ad-libbing? Yeah, we had to reboot. Okay, we're rebooting.
So were you on city business at Westport, or were you fishing?
We did not go fishing. We were just strictly goofing off and doing nothing.
Oh, good, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
A little downtime.
Went down for a couple days, yeah. We like to go to Westport a couple, 3 times a year. I'm a sentimentalist. We got married there, so we like to go back and just hang out. So, that's why we went. And unfortunately, it looks very dead.
Really,
Because
yeah.
there's no salmon fishing right now. Bottom fishing isn't very good, and there was very few boats out and very few people.
Yeah, that's,
So it's a sad economy.
Do you want me to go?
What do I have for backup?
Shadow puppets, right?
What, do you have a copy? We can copy out paper copies.
We would have to go to the agenda packets, and there should be copies in there that can be
yeah,
copied.
could they,
Do we want to go to a different item and I'll see if we can get some paper copies made of it?
That might be one of mine.
We all have an iPad, don't we have it right in front of us?
If everybody
we do,
else-
the public doesn't, but
I don't
I don't know whether they could they camera in on it?
Is everybody up on it okay?
Yeah. I-
It's in here, this is it here.
Does Ray have one? That's-
I have a hard copy. You want me to get copies made?
I think if you can work off of that.
I can work off of this, although a couple of graphs I really need,
Okay.
because they tell more of a story than I tell.
Do you have a PowerPoint in your?
Nikki's got the PowerPoint.
Do you want this?
Do you have the PowerPoint? Does everybody have the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
If you want to just talk off your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Beth, move it to your right.
Am I right?
You're right. Just keep moving on.
Okay.
There you go.
So.
There,
hold
wait.
Can you angle it at the camera, Beth? See the camera up in the corner? There you go. Oh, he's doing it with that camera. He's going over your other shoulder, I guess.
It's chunky.
Minor technical difficulty, right?
Thank you, Kathy.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to start on the paper copy from page 1. From Fair and Piers, remember, they were part of the team that was going to go out and do the feasibility study. So their report came in. We sent it back to them. We had some changes that we wanted them to make. That there were some inaccuracies from information they had received. So the three major topics that they were supposed to look at was the fire response coverage area, the analysis of a new station, and the analysis of additional staffing. That was their three prime functions. And in that, they found that Oak Harbor has 64% fewer career firefighters than the comparables that we use. Well, that caught me by surprise. Your finger's sliding across there. And so they found that we had 64% fewer career firefighters than the comparable departments that we use. We have a 40% larger coverage area per station when we just look at strictly the coverage area itself. We run on a 57% lower operating budget. Yep, there you go. Our current station was built in 1992, and at the time we built that, we thought it was a pretty good location when you looked at the potential growth of the city. And as we know that the growth has now moved to the south and southwest immensely. Okay, we're going to the next one, Beth. So Fair and Piers got a hold of ICOM, and they looked at the averages for 2014 and 2015, and then also projections into 2036. And with that, what they came up with, and this is the averages for the years, those 2 years, in the northwest quadrant, our average response time was 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Now, what you have to understand about average response time, it's really kind of a misnomer in some ways, because some places we're going to get to in a minute, other places it's going to take us 9 minutes. It just depends where you pick that spot up. All they did is took the entire northwest quadrant. You know, the times, our average response times are going to be different for medical calls versus fire calls, whether it's the primary call or a secondary call. If we have concurrent calls, how that affects our response time. So this is just strictly the average of everything that we did in the northwest quadrant. The total calls that we averaged for 14 and 15 is 151 calls in the northwest quadrant, which works out to a call density of 33 calls per 1,000 population of the area. The anticipated growth in the northwest area until 2036 is a 13% growth in households. Northeast quadrant, 3 minutes and 57 seconds, which makes sense because it's closer to the station. Our total calls is 318. Our call density is 58 per 1,000 population, so we have a higher call density in the northeast quadrant. And then our household increase in that area is projected to grow by 12% until 2036. Southeast quadrant, we showed a response time of 3 minutes and 22 seconds, which is totally understandable because of the location of the current fire station. So that makes the most amount of sense. Our total calls in that area is 278 calls is the average from 14 and 15. Our call density is 57 per 1,000, and the growth rate in the southeast quadrant is expected to be 11%. We're back.
It's right next to Ray.
So Southwest, our average response time is 5 minutes and 3 seconds. And again, when we look at the layout of the station, that looks like a relatively low number because there's so much in the southwest quadrant that's close to the department. As we know, as we look at it, our total calls in the southwest is 368 calls on the average. Our call density is 51 calls per 1,000 population. The big one here is the projected household increase in that south and southwest quadrant, which is a 26% increase between now and 2036. NFPA 1710, which is the standard for career fire departments for operations, says that we should have a 4-minute response time to 90% of all of our incidents. We currently meet that in the northeast and southeast quadrant. We definitely don't meet it in the northwest or southwest. City Council has, over the years, established 4 minutes for medical and 5 minutes for fire. So when you take a look at the information you had in the packet that I sent to you, you can see where the breakdown is the 4-minute coverage area, all the stuff in purple. So theoretically from our station, if our station on Whidbey Avenue is staffed, we're not on another call anywhere, we should be able to get there in 4 minutes 90% of the time. When they looked at the response time analysis, the Insurance Service Office, the ISO section 560, which is what Washington State Survey and Rating Bureau utilizes to determine call volume and call response, says we're supposed to have a 1.5 mile radius for our first engine company. So within 1.5 miles is the radius that we can go on drivable roadways. When you compare NFPA 1710 and the ISO rating, they're very similar when you look at 1.5 mile driving distance or a 4-minute response time. We know that there's areas in the city that we fail to meet either of those two requirements just because of the demographics of what we work with. So you can take a look here and you can see what the 1.5 mile area is from our current fire station. And this isn't new, we've talked about this before. Then they took a look at additional staffing. If we added more staffing, would that assist us? And it will assist us only in concurrent calls. 11% of the time, we are on concurrent calls. So when you consider that we have the initial call and we send our 4 people out on an engine company, they go to the call, as long as we can backfill the station, we can still get our 4-minute response time, but it doesn't change the distance that we have to travel. If we have concurrent calls and we have nobody else in the station, now we have to depend on mutual aid or automatic aid either from North Whidbey or NAS Fire, which plummets our response times. So our travel distance and our travel time is not affected by increasing staffing at the station. What it does is just make sure that we have staff available for that second call. When they looked at analysis of a fire station, the optimal location is at Southwest Swantown and Fireside Lane. If you look at the whole demographics of the southwest quadrant, northwest, how we could best service both areas, Swantown and Fireside. The problem with that is there's no property available. It's all built up, there's absolutely nothing available on that site. So they looked at the available sites that are in the southwest quadrant that would assist us. One is at SR 20 and Southwest 24th. One is at Southwest Ida Place and Fort Nugent. One is at Swantown Road and Fort Nugent, which is the Windmill Trailer Park, and one is the Fort Nugent Park. When they looked at SR 20 and Southwest 24th, it supports the coverage for the Southwest Quadrant, supports it well, and has access to SR 20. The problem is the access 20 to SR 20 presents a conflict because of the road configuration on 20 and the amount of traffic's there. Trying to cross that road would be rather difficult. And it's a high cost to purchase, about $1.4 million for a little over 3 acres. Southwest Ida Place in Fort Nugent provides really good coverage to the Southwest Quadrant, has good access to SR2 Southwest Fort Nugent. There's going to be a considerable amount of land work. When you look at the grading and the topography, we'd have to cut back hundreds of cubic yards of dirt just to make the site work, and it too is high priced at almost $1 million for 3 acres. Southwest Swantown and Southwest Fort Nugent, that provides the best coverage to the northwest and the southwest quadrants. It has the better coverage to the northwest quadrant than the other sites that we've looked at. There are some major grading problems. As you know, the Windmill Trailer Park is down in a real deep gully, so you'd have to build a lot of land up. We'd have to do some variances in the zoning, and again, that's another one for high cost to purchase. All this information is in the packets that you have received, so this is really probably just review for most everything. Fort Nugent, ease of access to Fort Nugent. It's already zoned for public facility. Some drawbacks to that is we're going to have to move power lines because of the configuration of the power lines. We have to purchase the property of the park at the fair market value, and that money will then go into the park fund, so there's no net park loss in the city. So we're going to have to purchase that land at the fair market value. So what I'm going to do is on July 5th, I'm going to ask for your recommendation on which site or sites that you would want us to consider for development. That's going to play a role in the design of the facility, how we do our cost analysis, depending on the different sites. After you look at the material, come back and tell us which site you think we should work on, and then we'll start with our developer, our engineers, and our architect to come up with a conceptual design and a cost projection. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't mean to raid on your parade, but we don't even know the final cost of the wastewater treatment plant. I don't see how we can even consider costs of a fire station or plans for it till we get done with that, because there is a limit to what our citizens can pay for. And that's the only thing. If you do this too premature, then all those cost estimates aren't going to work, and they're going to have to all be redone. So that's just my comment. I don't know how we can still investigate this when we're still waiting for final cost to be able to flush toilets, which would be important to a new station to do this. And there's a limit. So I understand the times. I understand that, that if you got more people at the station, it helps a little, but it doesn't help in travel time. But we're spending $100 million on a wastewater treatment plant that is vital to our town to even survive. And so I don't know how we can proceed too much farther and spend money if in 5 years we're going to have to redo all those plans. That's just my personal comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Holmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, you talked about in our private conversations about funding this, that you were going to go for general obligation bond. Is the timing going to be good for you, given that we still have a sewer rate increase coming up for the wastewater treatment plant? The school district also has a schedule for M&O election coming up. If you're competing for all of these, how is that your plan going to be successful with all these other forces for challenging for your budget?
Tough. In a word, tough. Okay. And we know when you look at elections and what kind of return we're going to have in the February one comparing to the general election, that plays a role. When we look at other people that want to be on the ballot at the same time, that's going to play a role. So there's a lot of hurdles that we have to look at, and when is the best time to put it on the ballot if we want to be successful. To me, it's tough to go on a ballot if there's 2 or 3 other organizations vying for those same dollars. That makes a tough decision. Which do you support and which don't you? So, you know.
So right now, you're asking us to give our opinion, support for a site selection to go forward with the preliminary design.
Correct.
Okay. So then that preliminary design is going to have a preliminary estimate, which is going to be subject to change when you actually get final design and go forward with that. And I understand that process. You're talking about a phased process. And do you have a timeline which you're looking at going for a bond election?
We were really looking to go into 17, although that's getting tighter to get to the early part of 17. Just when you look at the time constraints that we've got and when to put it on the ballot, when it has to be ready to go on the ballot, because now it's going to be ready in December to see if it's ready to go, if we went on the February ballot time. We have to look at, when other time is there to put it on the ballot, and what is our long-range plan of when we'd like to see that facility in service. Ideally, it would be nice to see if it could be available to be opened in 18. But there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that happen.
Okay, now that's the capital facility that you're talking about
Right.
right now. Now, there's going to be a requirement to create a new engine company and to maintain it and to staff it, et cetera. Where does that money come from?
Dr. Merriman and I have had that conversation. You want to run with that one?
Okay. Some of the potentials that we have to look at right now, our current general fund and the revenues and expenditures we have will be seen as fairly soon here. We don't have the money to support on our own right now a second fire station. So what it'll require is be one or both of two things. The first, from the building side, it's not that difficult or costly to finance putting in the fire station itself. Where the true cost comes in on the fire station is manning it and staffing it. That is the area that's more difficult. So we have a couple different options, things such as a levy lid lift on property taxes to do. You can do a special bond for the construction of the fire station, or there's some other types of things that we could look at doing on that. One of the things we have to do to know what parameters we have is get a rough idea what the costs are. That's why Ray's presentation is important, because we need to kind of start building the blocks of that station to know what the scope of any bond issue or anything is that we're looking at.
Okay. I'll just tell you up front, I support choosing a site and allowing you to go forward with the preliminary estimate on this, because the council has already authorized you to go forward, I think with is around 60 grand, something like that, for your preliminary design, and to build on that plan. But then you're really going to have to, before the city says, yeah, let's do it, you're going to have the community support who are going to pay for it, both for the facility and for the operation. I wouldn't want to build a facility and then not have the money for the operation.
And we've talked about this. It does us, and I want to be broad as I say this, it doesn't do us a lot of good to build that station unless we can staff it to get the coverage that we're looking for. But as I brought forth before, we work on a lot of pieces, and we got to get all those pieces to meld together at the same time in order to come up with a successful conclusion. And Beth, I agree with you. There's other things we have to look at on how it does affect the rest of the citizens. But understand my position. I have to look out for the safety of the citizens, as you do as well. And if we start talking about a 9, a 10, a 12-minute response time and my house is on fire, I'm a little concerned. I'm really concerned. And we've seen the difference of what happens in 4 minutes versus 8 minutes with people inside of house fires.
In a follow-up on that, if I may, we also talked about an alternative plan, even if it's interim, and that's to start with the new engine company first, with the potential of transferring that new engine company over to the facility if the community passes the bond for a new facility, what happened to that option?
You want to know that one? That's where it comes back to the time analysis, because even though we staff a second engine company, and we put 8 people in our station, the time and travel distance is still the same. The difference being is if our first engine company is out on a call, the second one is still back in quarters, they can at least respond to that concurrent call.
Yeah, but your feasibility plan here is taking into consideration growth, not just today's time.
Right.
So you don't have the growth today. If you're phasing in an engine company now, you may have the same response time, but you may have better coverage. Does that logic make sense?
I think I understand where you're going with it. Are you talking in the new facility?
I'm talking in the existing facility. If you start out with your second engine company, your response time to an event is still going to be the same distance, the same time. You just have more coverage if you had 2 events going on.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, there was a slide Ray had up there where he talked about concurrent calls.
Right.
And if you had a second engine company in the station, your real benefit is only going to be on 11% of your call volume. Otherwise, your single crew we have now can respond whatever radius.
Yep. So the second engine company,
It's a lot of money for just 11%
correct.
coverage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. One of the site selections is in Fort Nugent Park. The city owns, I understand the city owns that piece of land at the corner of Fort Nugent, and I don't know what they're, and the rest of Fort Nugent Park is owned by a school district. And the city is leasing that, and the city leased that for 20 years. And I understand that the lease will be expiring soon, I don't know when. But if this site is selected and the city built at a fire station, will there any impact the city building a new school in that area? Because I understand the city or the school district has a problem of building more classrooms, have temporary classrooms, and they might be building there another school at the Fort Nugent Park. Will there impact of building the fire station there?
Not directly, because of the position of where the school will be placed versus where the fire station will be located. Again, we have to purchase that property from the city, and we have to move that money into Parks Fund. So we don't get that land for free. So we have to buy it at fair market value, and then transfer the money to the parks in order to buy property somewhere else, so there's no net loss on parks. Where we see, if the school builds on the west site, that does not impact us.
Okay, I'm thinking about more of the when emergency vehicles are coming in and out of the fire station, might interfere with the school.
Just if I may add one to that, and Ray and I have talked this over, if the school district does take that election to use that property for a school, remember that our entrance to the park is on the school district side. So just one thing we would have to double check is, will we still have access to the school's property to get to our parking lot on Fort Nugent, or do we have to find an alternative entrance that'll be somewhere around where the fire station would go? So really, to answer your question fully, there is that one question in there for the school district on access to the existing city part of Fort Nugent Park.
Councilman Servadius.
Thank you. First, just kind of a statistical question. The northwest quadrant is a bit of an anomaly. Why are the calls so much lower there per thousand than the other 3? The other 3 are all about the same.
Mostly residential, not a lot of commercial, so not a lot of automatic fire alarms, not high-density dwellings, very few sprinkling systems. When you look at sprinkling systems, you look at the high school and 1 elementary school. So not a lot of commercial, just more residential.
Okay. Next one is kind of a statistical question. I don't know that it changes anything, but I'd be interested. The calls that exceed the 4 or 5 minute timeline, how many of those are there? So are you, and I'm sure they could pull this data out, so if you're getting a dozen calls that are 9 minutes, is that a dozen a month or a dozen a year that truly are extending those timelines? And what kind of calls are those? I'm assuming they're aid more than fire, but maybe not.
We can actually get out a report that would show you call by time, by type, and we can get you that information. I think you would find that fire would be higher just because of trying to respawn the apparatus. We can look at time differentials when we do out the report for you. It breaks it down in 1 minute increments on how long it takes you to respond to an incident. So we can print that out for you.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious, like, say, this is a problem I want to solve somehow. The next question would be, you mentioned of the three, well, you mentioned 3 acres 3 times. What is the Fort Nugent property? How much would we have there? Do we need 3 acres?
No, no. The other 3 sites, we have to buy the entire parcels. When I've talked with those folks, they won't break the parcels up.
Okay.
So it doesn't make sense to buy that acreage.
Okay. Is the preferred site on SR 20 and 24th, is that the edge of the city limits at the moment? Is it in city limits?
It is in city limits, and it's just almost to the southern edge where 24th is at. There's the open field just to the south of that.
Okay.
That's now in the city limits, so we would very much be right on the very southern tip of the land on the west side. On the east side of the road, of course, the city goes further down till when it gets down to Eagle Ridge.
Okay. So site selection, which I know is what you're asking us for, with the exception of purchasing the land, does that really change the overall cost that much? I mean, the building's going to be the same building probably on all 4 locations, correct?
No.
Not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Somewhat.
All depends on topography and how they had to design the building. You know, if we have to make a split.
True.
Because if you look at the topography that goes up, or you got a long sloping, when you have to look at, if you wanted a 50-foot drive aisle to get onto the roadway, and we've got in one location about a 6% grade almost on the road, you're moving out a lot of dirt in order to get that drive aisle open. Same way when you have the hollow to deal with.
Sure, that's fair. Okay. As for me, if the preferred location was SR 20 and 24th, I'd almost want to pursue that. When you look at a map, and I appreciate what Mr. Pagao said, if, and I don't know if it's if, but when there's an elementary school out there, there will be at times, there will be a lot of traffic between parents and buses at least 2 times a day. If we can avoid that and stay on 20, if that was truly their preferred location, you look at all the growth on a map, we're not going to go anymore, I don't think, to the north because of possible encroachment. We could go east. The likelihood is a little bit west or truly south, southwest. So as for me, if we're going to pursue this, and we're looking over the next 10, 20 years and beyond, I don't know why we wouldn't pursue the recommended location. Yes, it's going to be more to purchase that land versus whatever we would pay. I don't know what the delta between what we would pay for Fort Nugent and what we would pay for 24th, but as for me, if we're going to go down this road, I'd almost make the argument to look seriously at 20 and 24th to give the fire department easy access on the highway. It's fast. Might cost a little bit more, but long term, 20, 30, 40 years from now, that's what I'm looking at if we're going to make that investment.
But that also puts us further away from all the growth going on the southwest side, just because of access coming off of 20 onto Fort Nugent and then south and west on Fort Nugent.
But wasn't their recommendation, was the preferred location was 20th?
No.
SR 20 and 24th?
Their preferred location is Swantown and Fireside.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
Which is off of Heller, and there's no
right.
property available there. So that's the preferred location, non-usable, non-workable location.
Okay,
So,
I retract that then. I thought for some reason you had said it was the,
no, 20th and 24th is not one of the recommended.
okay. All right, still want to figure out how to solve it and pay for it.
Okay, yes, Councilor Heisen.
Do we have an estimate on what the fair market value of the parcel at Fort Nugent
Not at this point, no.
would be? No idea whatsoever. Okay. I have a number of comments, but the only thing you're asking us for today is to consider a site at the next council meeting, so.
Yeah, we would like you to come back and
Yeah.
give us your recommendation what site to go with.
Okay, I will keep the rest of my comments to myself for the time being.
Other questions, input? Councilor Holmberg.
What site is your recommendation, professional opinion, both based on cost and operational location?
My preferred site, is it okay?
You can say.
Okay, it's Fort Nugent. Doug and I have had this conversation before, and that's why I looked to him.
Ida Place?
No,
No.
Fort Nugent Park.
Okay. The only,
He didn't answer why. That was the second.
Oh, why? Location, accessibility, ease of getting volunteer firefighters to the location, the property, the layout of the property, the flatness of the ground, the amount of site work that does not need to be done. One drawback, of course, is the relocation of the power lines. We know that's an issue. When you look at access onto Ridgeway, access onto Fort Nugent, the positioning that we can lay a station into provides us the greatest flexibility to design a station.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a good answer for you?
That's a complete answer.
Thought about that at all.
I haven't practiced that one, by the way.
so, I have one question. When we changed the boundary line at Windjammer Park when we, with our facility down there that we're building. And I had at least one citizen ask me about the no net loss to the park question. And the question was, it's not about money. It's not all about money. Isn't it potentially about the amount of land? In other words, if we reduce the size of the park, are we clear with that question? Okay. So no net loss just means money.
No.
The code provision that addresses that doesn't address net loss. That was something that the council imposed upon ourselves or upon yourself with respect to Windjammer Park as we were talking about the clean water facility. So the code just merely says that if we're dealing with developed parkland and we want to change that to another public use, the council has to do that through a separate action. But the concept of net loss is not part and parcel to the code.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
That portion on Fort Nugent owned by the city, zone public facilities, is it considered a park?
My answer would be yes.
I would say that it is
Yeah.
too.
I did
Mapped
some-
it as part of the boundary of the park.
Yeah, and I did some research on the property. I sent this to Ray and found the original acquisition documents when the city bought that property. They were trying to get an ICA grant and some other things which never came to fruition, but they did pass a resolution that identified that area, and there's two actual pieces of property to that. It was designated as a park in that resolution.
So if it's designated as a park, we have, was that an ordinance that if a park will be moved or sold, you need the vote of the people?
No, there's
the
nothing
committee.
like that in there. No.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions, input? Good discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Moving along to pending agenda items. Item 4A, create new position, Fire Department Lieutenant. And we still have Chief Merrill here.
Thanks, Mayor. So, on the July 5th meeting, we're going to come to you and ask that you authorize us to create a new lieutenant's position. Just give you a little bit of history from 1997 to now. In 1997, we had a staffing of 10. In 2015, we have a staffing of 10, so no net increase in fire personnel. In 1997, we responded to 883 alarms. In 2015, we responded to 1,171 alarms for an increase of 32% of our call volume. So just to answer your question before you ask Mr. Almberg, most of these calls occur between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m., the amount of time that our career staff is on. So it's not when most of the paid on call are on at nighttime. As you know from our annual report, if you look at our call volume, we start getting busier about 2 o'clock in the afternoon up until about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. So most of these alarms would be considered during our career time. Our area's increased by 3/4 of a square mile. Our population has increased by 10.5% in this time period. And our occupancy inspections have increased from 782 to 1,035 for a 33% increase in commercial occupancy inspections every year. This doesn't include inspecting all the fire hydrants we have in the city. We inspect every one every year, and I can't tell you the number of fire hydrants there are. I just know there's a bunch. I could not give you an exact number by any means. To give you an idea of our staffing, I work Monday through Friday is what I'm told I'm supposed to work. I think there's an extra day or two that throws in there every once in a while. The deputy chief and the training captain both work Monday through Thursdays. I will say the training captain sometimes will work a Saturday. Sometimes he'll work late Monday nights, Wednesdays nights, and Thursday nights, just depending on his schedule. We do have 3 captains that work on the E, F, and G shift, and we have 4 firefighters, 2 that work on A shift and 2 that work on B shift. So our career captains work a 24-hour shift, and this is probably a lot of review for you, but as you well know that we work some really varied shifts with all of our different people. Doug and I were talking about this one day, and he says, can you write this down on a piece of paper for me, just so I have a better understanding? So they work 24-hour shifts, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 96 off. They have 8 Kelly days per year. And just so you know, Kelly days, Doug Kelly in the Chicago Fire Department was the creator of Kelly days. That's why they're called Kelly days, because he had to get his hours down to 216 hours per 28-day cycle. And Mr. Kelly is the one that figured out the shifting in the Kelly day. There's your nostalgic for the day. So they do get 8 Kelly days per day, so we keep their hours under the required maximum. During the daytime, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., they're the engine company officer or the station officer. After 7 p.m., they're the command officer at night. The command shifts, myself, Chief Buxton, Captain Anderson, do it Monday through Fridays. Craig and Mike pretty much take it Monday through Thursday. I take it every Friday because, of course, they're off. So I've got command every Friday. The career captains work from 7 at night till 7 a.m. as the command officer over the 4 paid on call that are on shift. If a career captain is off, we hire back one of our paid on call officers to do command at night. So our paid on call captains, which of 3 of them take command, take every weekend day, so Saturday and Sunday from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. They take every holiday 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and when the career captain is off. So if they're off on, if one of our career captains is off at night, we hire back a paid on call firefighter or paid on call captain to fill that command position. Anytime there's a 3-person crew, which is 50% of every month we have 3 people on, I keep command until 7 p.m. I'm not complaining, it's just the way it is. And then if no paid on call officer signs up for command shifts, then I take command either on the weekends or at night. Again, it's part of the job. It's just the way it is. So our firefighters work A shift and B shift. They work 4 12-hour days, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Our paid on call come in at 7 p.m. and work until 7 a.m. We hire back 4 paid on call firefighters. Then our firefighters are off for 4 days. They get no Kelly days because of their schedule. NFPA 1710, the same one we look at response times, also says that they require a minimum crew of 4 firefighters on an engine company. A minimum of 4. They also require a minimum crew of 4 firefighters on all truck companies. So I want you to take a look at our staffing from June of this year till October. And this is nothing new. This is typical every year. Every place you see a red mark, somebody is off.
Wait a minute.
Every place we see red, somebody is off.
That is correct.
There's a lot of people off.
You are correct.
How do you put out a fire with nobody there?
That's a very good question. That's the reason we're having this discussion. So count up the number that are there. I think there's 21 or 23 in the month of June alone that we're running with a 3-person crew against NFPA standards. Pardon me?
Sometimes two.
Yeah, if either Chief Buxton or myself take the time off, that adds to that line item. And Chief,
Just explain this, I mean, obviously there's going to be people off. These are of the 4 possible careers.
that's correct.
And so if a career, if you're down to 3, you would not bring on a paid on call this is during the day schedule?
That is correct. We cannot bring on a paid on call to fill that career position unless we go to the union and specifically ask them permission to bring on a paid on call to backfill that position,
Okay, so this is the day schedule we're looking at.
day and night,
Okay,
because our command officers are on here as well.
okay.
So, take a look at, the next one will actually show a little better. This is June. It shows some of our people being off. You can see where, like on the 13th and the 14th, I happened to be off. Don Bear was on. Steve McCalmont was off. He's one of our firefighters, but you notice that Steve McCalmont, we took him from being a firefighter role, and on the 14th, we put him into a 24-hour shift so we could backfill where we had a vacant officer's position. The drawback to that now is Steve takes we give him another day off, so it now brings our crew back down to 3 again. This gets to be quite a shell game that Mike does in order to get people to fill positions. So that's June. There's July. From the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, that is our shift officer, our command officer at night. I've got to hire back a paid on call every one of those nights, as well as Saturdays and Sundays. Remember, I got 3 paid on call officers that can fill those positions. Or we get creative and we move our firefighters around again to do 24-hour shifts, maybe work a 12-hour, do a 24, and then be off for the rest of his shift, so we're down to a 3-person crew again. Every place they're off, we are short-staffed. And then you can see the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, Otto's on vacation. We've got to cover people on their Kelly days. Another problem we're running into is a lot of our captains are at their maximum on their vacation time. It's use it or lose it. And some of us in this room seem to use it or lose it more than we use it. You notice we looked across at each other. We've had this conversation before. We don't want our guys to lose the vacation time they've earned, so they've got to take it off. And at the rate they earn it, they've got to get the time off. And you can see how that schedule affects us. So every place you see red is 3 people, or is 1 person off, a 3-person crew. That's July. There's August. There's September. So again, you can see September, the problem that we run into, short staffing again. And we've tried to be creative over the years to get staffing, to move people around, to make sure that we can get coverage. One of our guys was off on medical for almost 7 weeks. And we did. We went to the union and asked them permission to hire back a paid on call to fill that union position. And the union graciously allowed that to happen. So you can see what our staffing levels are. That's me. And again, you can see October. And October isn't done yet because October is hunting month. And
Wait a minute, that's not a fire season.
that's not a fire season, I agree. But I can bet that there's going to be people taking some vacation days. And our guys, they turn their vacation in at the end of December so we can at least try to plan it, but we know there's going to be changes. So, you know, and I've said this before, we've done this for years, we've tried to make it work. It's just, we're getting to the point where we can't make it anymore. We just can't do it. For the rest of the remainder of this year, it's not budgeted for. It's going to be about $50,000 for wages and benefits. Dr. Merriman and the mayor and I have discussed this. If you want to weigh in here, I'd be happy to have you weigh in on it. Just keep going. So we're going to find a way to budget for the position. The process that we want to do is do an assessment center, do an in-house for our career staff, and do our paid on-call firefighters. The idea is that this lieutenant's position, and as you know in our long-range plan and the organizational chart that you approved back in December, does show the lieutenants coming back into the fold when the station's built to staff that station. We're just trying to move this process up, and this lieutenant position would be a floater that could go in and fill these empty positions to take the burden off our firefighters, our paid on call. You know, if we keep going at the rate we're going with 14 and 15 shifts a month for our paid on call officers, they're going to get burned out and they're going to quit doing it. That's asking a lot of those guys when they do 8 shifts just on the weekends, plus the empty shifts, the holidays, the nighttime shifts. They've done a great job. They have done a fantastic job, but it does take a toll. So our process is to do the assessment center, open up to career and paid on-call firefighters in order to hire this lieutenant's position, and we'll do the top 3, we'll go to the chief's interview. It's going to be a floater position to fill in where the voids are made and be able to take some of the burden off the rest of the people. We'll bring this forward on the July 5th meeting, and we'll be looking for your approval to do this.
Are you working firefighter paramedics or pure firefighters?
Pure firefighter EMT. With one, we have one paramedic that works at the hospital and works for us at the same time.
Question. You want to address where that $50,000 is going to come from that's not in the budget right now?
We have enough right now in our fund balance to carry us through the end of the year. We'd probably do something on this position to get us through this, into this budget season, and then we can come back through and finish out how we're going to fund it going into the future as we do our regular budget deliberations, and that'll be this fall. So there's enough to do this for now to get this coverage, but it will be an important part. That position, you know, just rough numbers, it's a $100,000 a year position. So it will be something that we'll need to take a really close look at.
That's my next question to you. So we do it right now. What happens next year or in our biennium budget?
Yeah. If it's a council priority, then we would have to incorporate that in there and find the money or the priorities to do
In
that.
your opinion, is it doable?
We'll see. There are a lot of other things on the table. It's one thing whether it's doable under today's scenario, but if it's an important criteria for safety and those things there, then you have no choice. I mean, we have to get in and make that a priority and find the money to do it. It may mean there are some hard decisions in other places to make that happen, but that's a policy decision we'll have to look at in that budget process.
So we're making this decision, this commitment to an expenditure, a fairly large one for your department, before we even have the budget process go forward. Once we're committed to it, we're committed to it. So are there other areas that you may sacrifice or you're able to sacrifice? I mean, there's got to be a priority system within your package when you're putting your budget together.
There will be things that we will consider certainly giving up for next year that we would talk about putting in next year's budget.
Where this position is
Yep.
more important than...
I've got to look at firefighter safety for my folks. We don't meet NFPA standards. I get very, very concerned if I'm sending a 3-person engine company out as a first initial unit to a structure fire. That to me is very risky risk management. You know, when we look at our staffing levels and the problems that we're seeing and the short staffing on a consistent basis, and you know, I've said this, we've done this for years. We've made it work over and over and over again. We're getting to the point where we can't just make it work anymore. I mean, this is a priority. This is a safety priority for the citizens, and it's a safety priority for our firefighters.
Thank you.
Two parts. It probably sounds like a very naive question, but the calendar you were showing us, the problem is there's a Is there a lack of pool to pull on for command? Is that what the issue is? Is that why? I'm not understanding why we can't get it. Do we need to create a whole nother person's position? Or do we need someone promoted so that you have, is it a lack of a command officer? Or why do we not have a pool of another person to pull up?
We only have 4 authorized positions for paid-on-call captains. So we have that pool to draw from. We only have 3 career captains, and because they're already on shift, we can't, well, we can go back and ask them to do overtime. But let's say a guy works 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, you're gonna call him in to do overtime so he does a 96 in a row? Not a wise thing to do. Definitely doesn't meet the standards as far as time at work. 96 in a row is a long time to be there. You know, we could look at creating more officer positions in the paid-on-call ranks, but there's no requirement on the paid-on-call to take that command position. It's suggested, it's certainly asked for. If you want to take it, it's available, but it is not a physical requirement of the job for that position.
And I don't recall exactly, but our last budget cycle, I'm always impressed. Most people operate under the mindset of use it or lose it. You didn't do that. You had a surplus of 190 something. Do you remember the number?
This year was only about 30,000. Doug and I have talked about this. There was a spike because of some work that was done that showed us in the negative, but when you take that spike out for all the lighting that took place, we were about 30. Over the years, though, there's been years we've turned in 250,000. There's years we've turned in 140,000. So consistently, we have turned money back and not just went out and spent it at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Councilperson Isaac.
We've reached critical mass here. This is not a new conversation. The council has known for 10 years that we need another firefighter. And our reason for not adding that position is the money. We don't have the money, it's gonna cost money. It's always the money. And I don't know where it's gonna come from. And I understand that the department will have to prioritize and sacrifice, but I feel like we should be asking ourselves what our priorities are first and what we're willing to sacrifice first, instead of making the department do that, because it's not their fault they don't have enough staff, it's ours. And this council did not bat an eyelash at a 6-figure a year economic development position. There was absolutely no offense, Barb, you're amazing. Well, including benefits and the work and all the things, yeah. That's not really what we're paying you. So when that came up, I mean, there was no hesitation, 0. And yet when it comes to public safety, we don't want to spend the money. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I think it's a blatant disregard for public safety. We've been doing it for years and it's completely not okay with me. So support this 100%. We cannot keep dragging our feet on this. There's no excuse at this point. There's just none. Like Doug said, we don't have a choice. So personally, I'm disappointed that it has come to this. But I guess I'm kind of glad it has, because now we have to do something. And we'll just have to figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to agree with Ms. Hyson. We should make this a priority in our looking for funding for this position. We have the responsibility of approving the comprehensive plan, which is one of the goals is for the response time for the emergency services, police and fire is included there, that they need to respond to emergencies within 5 minutes. And I think the reason for that we set it aside, is to prevent further destruction of properties and for prevention of lives, loss of lives. And I think we need to provide them with the necessary tools, and one of these tools is the additional personnel. And historically, as you have shown, that the number of staff personnel has not increased in the last 18 years. That's all.
Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Merriman, I know you've told the department heads to start kind of working on their budget things. Do we know how much increased revenue we have gotten, sort of, for this year? Has it gone up any from last year?
It's gone up some. We're going to be, shortly, Patricia is going to be bringing forward our budget calendar to talk over with you guys. And one of the very first steps, as we've done in prior cycles, is we'll be bringing those revenue projections forward and to see how we've been doing and what we see for the next biennium, if there's been an improvement in our revenue picture since we had the recession. So we don't have all of those numbers. I've seen
Right.
areas like REIT and stuff like that. But in the general fund in particular, we have to look at that a little more closely and see what we can really count on in the coming years. Things that make that a little skewed right now is we get some sales tax, but it comes from the wastewater treatment plant. So we want to make sure we don't budget those as an ongoing operational item. So it's going to take us a little bit of work to make sure that we're giving you the core revenues and not something that's a little bit skewed because of a one-time project. That's just one example of some things we have to get quantified first.
But even a little bit, then, through city council, there can be a solution between general fund and what his budget is without completely depleting it from everything to hire this person and then make it an ongoing thing. I mean, I know each department is responsible for their money and how they want to spend it and staff their people and equipment and all of that. But it looks like there's probably going to be some type of compromise in there that we can up for this person. They may have to give some, but anyway, there's a solution. So it's not all or nothing, either all their budget or all of us. So we can come in there with, okay, and be sure that it is funded. That's the hard thing, is once you start something, you don't want to end it. You want to be sure it's an ongoing thing. So as long as I know we're not down 18% again in revenue, I mean, even a little bit will help as far as that compromise and trying to find a solution between the two things. So I won't be at that meeting, but I am for a solution to make this an ongoing give deal, but, and I'm not sure I can call in from wherever, Kaufman's Cove or whatever, so, thank you.
Other questions, input? Couple questions I didn't ask when we had our meetings, Chief. Your alarm numbers include all calls, which would be the EMT calls and so forth. Do you know how the fire calls alone would in 97 to 2015? Do you know what the fire only?
I can go back through all the annual reports and I could get you that, what our breakdown is. We run about, and I hate to throw abouts out, but about 45%, 50% of our call volume now is EMS, when would-be general calls for our help. Everything else is fire. I can't tell you off the top of my head what it looked like in 97 because we didn't have the same style of contract that we then as we do now with the EMS from the hospital. But I can certainly go back and take a look over the few years and see, you know, when we consider whether it's a rescue, a motor vehicle accident, a structure fire, a car fire, I can back out the number of EMS calls and come up with what our call base looks like. I can tell you in 15, I gotta put my glasses on. I didn't have to do this before. In 15, we ran 46% were EMS calls, so 54% were fire calls of some sort. Not necessarily structure fire, but strictly fire type calls.
That's a larger figure than what I thought, so.
Yep.
Yeah. In the EMS area, are we subsidized?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so, and that, if that number of calls increases, our subsidization increases.
Right, we get paid by call.
Okay.
$93 per call every time Whidbey General calls us, they pay us $93.
And then finally, you mentioned, I think Mr. Holmberg asked a question about your paid on call. You have 4 that are at the command level.
Correct.
Do we have other paid on call firefighters that could be trained and would like to be trained? Or is that limited by the union?
There's some limitations. We have to look at Survey and Rating Bureau because we have to get recognized and in order to get credit for them to be on a call, they have to be a certain rating or above. So it's tough to take a paid on call firefighter and put them into a command position. I'm not saying we can't do it, but there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to transpire before that would ever occur.
Okay.
Because they just don't get enough time in it to do it effectively and efficiently.
Okay.
Can I just make a couple comments as the new guy? As your response times degrade, doesn't the Washington Fire and Safety Rating Bureau, doesn't that affect insurance rates in this community?
Oh, absolutely.
Across the board?
Yep.
Everybody's insurance goes up.
Yep.
So you're going to pay for it one way or another. The other thing I would comment, I'm really surprised you only have 10 people. Port Angeles is a couple thousand people smaller. Their call load's heavier. They've got 21 full-time firefighter paramedics. And they haven't had a staff increase in 20 years. So 20 years ago, they had 21 full-time firefighter paramedics. And it's the medical that's killing them. Because people use the 911 system to access health care. So some of the things you've talked about, I've heard talked about in Port Angeles as well. A rule of thumb for staffing an agency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, is you have to hire 4.7 people to keep one person on the road 24 hours a day. So you can't get 4/7, you got to hire 5. You have enough people to staff 2, but you're staffing 3 somehow. So those are just things to think about.
We've been very innovative over the years with our paid on call staff, our career staffing, how we do it.
I try not to say things nice about the fire service, but
It's different here.
Yes, Councilor. Councilor Munn.
Question kind of off the wall, but it concerns the fire chief before 4th of July and before our next meeting. I believe provisions have been made in the law that if there is a fire danger, that you would make a call whether or not sales or show would go on type of thing. I know that my yard is already starting to turn brown. We just got rain, but I mean, everything is happening earlier. Usually it doesn't get dry till towards the end of July and then definitely in August, and it comes back in late September, October. So fire season is coming probably earlier, and I don't know when that call would be made for the city, and I know that there are nonprofits that count on this. I mean, is there any plans or what you look at, or is it last minute? Last year, I think you had police and fire kind of staged all around Windjammer and kind of shutting people down that were not exactly firing them where they should be, so we could keep limit to our commercial district downtown, because they decided this looked like a good place to shoot off some of their fireworks. So I didn't know, we don't have another meeting until after the 4th, so just curious about that plan or ideas for.
Well, this could be a really long-winded answer, so I'm going to try to keep it short, because we're almost out of time. The state law says that we can't make any changes immediately. If we did something right now, we can't make that change until 2017. So you have to have a year lead time in order to either reduce the fireworks sale, eliminate fireworks sale, change the dates of fireworks sale. If we become more restrictive than state law, we have to do that by ordinance. Has to be established a year in advance. Island County was going to try to change the dates that they could sell fireworks or discharge fireworks. Again, state law says from June 28th until July 5th and all of December 31st you can allow fireworks to exist. In order to change that, it would take an ordinance by the city a year in advance. There has to be, and as we saw last year, even though there was a high fire danger and there was a burn ban in place, The burn ban didn't affect the sale of fireworks. It affected the outdoor burning regulations, canceling outdoor burning regulations, being more vigilant about burning, but fireworks remained allowed from June 28th till July 5th. I will say, as dry as it was last year in the city, our total fire area from fireworks was smaller than the size of these tables put together. You know, I think it was amazing how well the citizens did to protect themselves, that we didn't have a greater fire danger. You know, and you're right, we were in the park, we were around Windjammer, we were around town. NES provided an engine to assist us. We had additional crews on that night. We were out driving around town just to be ready in case.
Thank you.
So that's a short version of a long answer.
Thank you.
We did have a discussion, because a citizen brought it to our attention.
Yes.
About, we think, quite a bit of discussion, and thank goodness, keep our fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever, but we have not had a fire in 8 years during the 4th of July, so
Yeah.
hopefully we continue that.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate, and as
have.
the mayor said, it's been 8 years since we actually had a structure fire directly related to a fireworks incident. We've had some grass fires, but no direct structure fire. So we've been very fortunate.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor.
Final item, 4B, Arts Commission, code amendment to increase membership. I see our senior planner, Kat Kamak, is back. Welcome back, Kat.
Thank you. So if the council remembers when the Arts Commission was first created, I forget, maybe 10 years ago, the ordinance kind of structured 11-member commission. And it started off with 11 members, and after a year or so, it was very difficult to sustain that many number of commissioners in terms of just managing meetings and finding full attendance. And so that number was dropped down to 7, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, the commission has been fairly stable in terms of the number of commissioners we've had. Recently, we've seen an increase in interest in being on the Arts Commission. And we also have actually ex officio members from the school district, school students participating in the Arts Commission as well. They don't vote on anything related to financial information, but from design and stuff. So we're getting good interest from citizens wanting to be on the commission. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to come to the commission and increase it to 9, not go back to the original 11, just go up a couple commissioners to 9. And see how long that works, and if it works and if it's stable, that's a good number to work with. So we're bringing forth an ordinance on July 5th to do that. So thought we'll introduce it here, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions? Okay. Councilor Heisman.
What are, I don't have the code in front of me, I'm sorry, but what are the current requirements to be on the Arts Commission? Do you have to live in city limits? Do you have to?
I think it says the majority of the commissioners would have to either live or work in the city limits.
Okay.
So it's just a majority. So you can have a few commissioners that are outside.
Okay. And this is one of those random off the wall questions, but the interest that you've been hearing about, is that just a function of working with, students and other members of the community, or have any of those inquiries come in through Granicus?
No, we're getting not through Granicus, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But it's just community interest.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank you, Kat. I'd like to, with that, I know we're getting towards the end here, but I'd like to thank our volunteers. We have many, many volunteers, somewhere in the close to 100 volunteers on our various committees in our city, and we have had what I think is a renewed interest in several of our commissions, and it's really nice to see. So to the public out there, thank you. To the many volunteers, Mr. Gallagher was telling me about a young person that's been on our CAG committee, or Citizen Advisory Committee, from the high school, and he's just transitioning off, but he's spent a number of days, or excuse me, actually a couple of years on the commission, and I'll be announcing more about his what it's done for him and what it's done for the commission. So thanks to all volunteers, and we really appreciate you. I also wanted to say that we've talked probably more, at least I believe we've talked more at our department head meetings about working together, about that was my campaign, was all about working together. And I think not only is our city making efforts to do that better, I know our staff is, and I want to compliment the entire staff. It just feels like we're working more as a team, and we're going to endeavor to do that more and more. I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that have happened just recently. We had a one of our building projects, actually, the state came up and decided they didn't like a little part of what was going on, so they, what you would call red tagged the project. But our Development Services Department was involved because the state was involved. Not only did we work with the people, we very quickly allowed other workers on the site to continue working in spite of the state's concern until that part of the project could get figured out. So the project was able to continue going forward. The people were extremely happy, and I know that the main reason for that was the way our staff got behind that. So thanks to the Development Services Department for that, those decisions. I attended a Seroptimus meeting this last week to give a State of the City presentation, and I was told by a couple of people in the audience that same department worked with them on a code change to get one of our city codes changed. That was kind of an old code that wasn't as effective probably today as we thought it was years ago when it was put in place. And the Development Services Department made a change in that code in about 5 weeks' time. And they said, unbelievable. So that's what our staff is working to do, I think, better than ever, and we're going to try to continue in that direction. So thank you, staff. I appreciate your efforts, believe me. And with that, unless somebody else has got any additional, I appreciate it, and we'll bring the meeting to an end.